New channel. The new channel. Hashtag TNC Now.
The views, opinions, and insights expressed in the following shows are those of the host, producers, guests, and viewers. They do not necessarily reflect the position of the channel. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome to the new channel. Our passion transforms a community that sees all things new. I am Alpha Sanford and I'm streaming live from Boston, Massachusetts. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, mabuhay. Welcome to Once a Teacher, Always a Teacher on TNC. Hi, everybody. I want to start by saying thank you to all of you. I am very grateful for your support and for continuing to watch and listen to Once a Teacher, Always a Teacher. So, for today's episode, we are going to be talking and conversing with a current school principal here in Massachusetts. What is special about this episode is that I believe he is the only Filipino school principal that I know in Massachusetts. So for me, it's like, ooh, this is something. It's very special because, like I said, he's the only Filipino school principal that I know here in Massachusetts. So there's a lot of things there that for me, it's important as a Filipino-American school leader. All right. So before I bring our guest for today, let me just give you a little bit of his background. So our guest for today is the current principal of the Woodland Elementary School in Weston, Massachusetts. He officially became the school principal at this elementary school in July of this year. So prior to his administrative roles, our guest taught for more than 15 years. He began his teaching career as a grade 7 math teacher in Framingham and then transitioned to the Acton-Boxborough Regional School District, where he taught math, science, technology, and engineering to students in 5th and 6th grades. He also taught math at the Seven Hills Charter School in Worcester and was the English language learner liaison for the community. Mr. Dimen earned his bachelor's degree in rehabilitation counseling from Boston University, a master's in public administration from Seattle University, and he completed a postgraduate program in school administration at Lesley University. Without further ado, I would like to bring in our special guest today, Mr. Jason Dimen. Jason.
Good evening, Alpha.
Good evening, Principal Dimien. How are you today?
Very, very well. Thank you. ¿Cómo está everybody out
Oh,
there?
I love it. Mabuti.
Li-
Yeah,
just a little bit of Tagalog now, but working on it.
that's right. That's right. So, Principal Dimien, as I was introducing you to our folks today, you seem to have a lot of all these different experiences. You have it all. So I feel like you were in all those years prior to becoming a principal, you have all of these different experiences that really led you to become a principal.
Yes, but even before that, I had a lot of eclectic experience before I
Mhm.
became an educator, and I
Okay.
think that's helped me a lot in my journey through education and now as a leader.
Hmm. So, would you be willing to share us your eclectic experiences prior to being in the education field?
Sure, absolutely. So, as most Filipino immigrants that come to the U.S., I was fortunate to be in a family of doctors. Both my parents were doctors, and obviously we came to the U.S. for. They had a dream of their children coming to great schools in the United States and Massachusetts in particular. So I went to Boston University, and I started off as an engineer, actually, biomedical engineering. But I went through a couple of years of that, and I had lots of different passions, and it just wasn't the right fit for me. And when I started to look at what I really wanted to do with my life and what fit my passion, it's really working with people, and therefore I ended up in the rehabilitation counseling department at Boston University, which is a top-notch program,
Mhm.
and graduated from there. And I got great internships working with people with mental illness, with
Mhm.
people with spinal cord injuries, rehabilitation, and ultimately ended up with my now wife working down in Cape Cod in Falmouth with what's called a clubhouse model. So
Okay.
people with mental illness who are, you know, trying to get back to work after spending some time in the hospital or whatnot. And that really was my first job in the
Mhm.
real world, so to speak. And so I very quickly became assistant director there and in charge of what's called the transitional employment program, where I help people get their first job after being out, for a long time, or their first job ever. And I did that by going out to the community and meeting with employers and assuring them that the candidates that we had trained will work for them. And if they couldn't make it to work, I'd go to work for them,
Mhm.
ensuring that there's always someone there. So early on, I learned to work with people, learn what people needed, and really uh, fill the bill, so to speak. So whatever the members I worked with needed, I gave them the support, and therefore they could be successful. One of the best images that I remember from my life is one of the first people I helped, who was a 48-year-old man who had never really worked because he had always um, been hospitalized or whatnot. Uh,
Mm.
Came back from the first 2 weeks from his job, and let me just give you a little visual. He showed me
Mhm.
his check, put it up over his head, and said, "Look what I did! Look what I did!" And yes, he did it. I felt
Yeah.
grateful for a little bit of helping him out a little bit in that regard. So from there, public social service work doesn't pay all that much, and I was as an assistant director, I was in charge of looking at our funding and I asked myself, why we're doing such great work? Why are we getting cut our
Mm.
funding? That led me to explore public administration, uh,
Mm-hmm.
looking at how nonprofits work, and how government works and together with
Mm-hmm.
nonprofits. So at the time as well, we wanted to, my now wife and I wanted to explore the Pacific Northwest. And that's how we ended up in Seattle, where I got my master's degree in public administration. And from there, I got involved with local government politics
Mm-hmm.
as well as state politics. We eventually moved to Portland, Oregon, and got involved with state politics there. And at one point, I actually ran for office as a
Oh
state
yeah.
representative. I
Wow.
didn't win the election, but I really learned a lot. Campaigning. My daughter
Mm.
was just born at the time, or actually, she was due about 2 months before uh, we I started to campaign, and throughout the pregnancy, the end of the pregnancy and birth, I was campaigning, and it was kind of a tough time, but I really believed in what I was doing because I was setting the stage for my daughter, who at some point will go into education. So I wanted to make sure that the funding was there, as well
Mm.
as the quality schools. So that led me to a couple of years of work in government, and then that was about 1999, I believe. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm dating myself now, but at that time, my roommate from college had called. It was just the beginning of the internet
Mm-hmm.
boom, and so he asked me, what I'm doing for work at that time, and I was working for the local government, Multnomah County in Oregon, and he says, whatever it is, I'll double it. And I need you to go down to San Francisco and open up a, satellite office from our Wall Street office. And
Uh-huh.
the business was to put together entrepreneurs and angel investors online. So
Mm.
I jumped at the opportunity. My daughter at that point was about a year and a half old, I believe. And it was a risk, but it was a risk worth taking. And it was one of those things that I told my spouse that, it's something I would regret if I hadn't done.
Mm.
And sure enough, we had a great time. It was we were there for about a year and a half in the Pacific. I'm sorry, in the Bay Area, and met a lot of people, did a lot of networking, and there was one regret that I never really saw my daughter at night because there was a
Mm.
lot of networking events and
Mhm.
different things out in the tech community that I had to
Mhm.
go to. So I always came home and she was already asleep most of the times I came home. Um, just fast forward a little bit. So the company was eventually bought out. I worked for another startup at that point, but we wanted to go back home because
Mm.
my parents lived in. We were raised in Rhode Island, and my
Okay.
wife
Yeah.
lived in the North Shore of Boston.
Mhm.
And at that point, we wanted my daughter to be closer to family. So it was a good time to head back. I, made a little bit of money from the sale of the company and working out in the tech community. So we drove back. We took about a month and traveled
Wow.
across the country with my not then 2-year-old daughter and a cat. And went all over through Arizona, through Colorado, through a lot of the states that I hadn't seen before. So
Mhm.
that was another precious adventure and memory that I have. Eventually came back to Massachusetts, and had the means to sort of find out what I want to do next.
That's
And
right. Mm.
what happened was there was always this itch to work with kids as I did as I was younger. I
Mhm.
remember when I was 20 years old, I was coaching a little league team. I just stopped by,
Mm.
watch these kids plane, I volunteered. I said, hey, does anybody, do you need a coach? I went to the league and they hired me as a coach, volunteer, of course. But that was kind of gnawing on me, kind of like a calling. And
Mm-hmm.
that was in April when we moved back to Massachusetts. And by that September, I had just walked into a school up in Boxford in Ipswich, Massachusetts. And I said, hey, if you need a substitute teacher, let me know. And
Uh-huh.
sure enough, they called me the first day. And I was working every day as a substitute. And by, I believe it was by November, I was actually hired as a long-term substitute into a classroom working with about 6 students, pull out and
Mm-hmm.
help with academics and so on. So I caught the bug right then and there. When you teach kids and their eyes light up, the whole the deal,
Right.
the aha moments. There were plenty of those, and I think the principal at that time saw something in me as well and said, "You got to be a teacher." And I said,
Mm.
"Well, let's do it. Like, how do I go about it?" And
Mm-hmm.
she mentioned, getting all your licensure and things like that. So uh, she at that I believe it was that September after my substitute experience, there was an open house for hiring in the
Mm-hmm.
Framingham School District, and I met one of the principals there. He invited me to come interview for a math position. And at this time, I didn't even have a license. So I'm like, well, I'll go to the interview. I didn't tell them I didn't have a license. I told them at the interview. And, but they liked what I brought, the passion, the energy. And
Yeah.
on my way out to the car, he opens the window and says, hey, come on back, Jason, come on back. I'm like, okay. So he's like, we want to hire you. We want to hire you. I said, okay, but I'm working on my license. I don't have my license yet. He's like, don't worry about it. We'll give you a waiver
That's right.
or
Yeah.
something like that. And
Mm-hmm.
so so yeah, my first year was teaching grade 7 math in Framingham with a waiver, and I eventually took the middle school math test that year, passed it, and with my bachelor's degree got 5 years, right? Because it's a provisional license at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But I learned on the job, literally,
Mm-hmm.
not only the content but also managing the classroom, and I really really enjoyed it. In fact, I brought a lot of what I did in the private sector. For example, meeting with potential uh, entrepreneurs, and
Mm-hmm.
when they came to pitch to investors, I saw that all they did was algebra. They showed
Yeah.
profits and losses and graphs and uh, linear algebra, literally. So that's what I taught. It was project based learning. In that seventh grade classroom, I came up with this idea of, what if we start a business? What if I had these
Mm.
kids, you know, work in groups and start based on what their passion is, start a business out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I clearly remember one group who loved to fix bikes. Like
Mm-hmm.
three young men who said, "Hey, we can if we fix bikes. Do you think we can get paid for it?" I said, "Well, why not?"
Yeah.
So they
Uh-huh.
started that. But then there was this one young woman who was very very quiet, and didn't really didn't really hear a word from her until
Mm-hmm.
this project. And she wanted to she was a seamstress, a budding seamstress. She made
Mm-hmm.
clothes at home and
Mm-hmm.
so on, and that's what she wanted to do, was sell her work. And so um, she made a business plan like everybody did in the project, used what they knew from math that I taught them on linear algebra to show the profit and loss, uh, and eventually we went to the PTO because there were so many great
Mm.
ideas, and we did
Mm-hmm.
sort of a version of Shark Tank. And
Wow, that's pretty cool. Uh-huh.
yeah, it was just like real life, the life I had the
Yeah.
year before or a couple years before. Now, using that to educate students on applying the math that they've been learning. And so we brought five of the projects to the PTO, and they funded the first couple. And one of them was that young woman who I believe was only $200 to $300, but she was able to buy the materials, the cloth to make some of her dresses. And she a couple months later she brought it into school, and I believe one of the teachers bought one of the dresses actually. So that was, again, that I was hooked to begin with, but that even fueled more desire to educate a lot of kids in real life, situations, so to speak. At that time, my daughter was now about 4 years old, I believe, and she was entering preschool. And a year later, she was going to go to kindergarten. And we lived in Boxborough at the time in central Massachusetts. And so I wanted to work with younger kids because at the previous school, some students maybe didn't have the math fundamentals, and I wanted to work with younger kids to make sure they knew their math facts and fundamentals in decimals and percentages and fractions. And so I literally just stopped by the local public school in Boxborough. It's called Blanchard School. Gave him my resume around end of June or towards the end of the school year. I said, if you have any math positions available, I'd be interested. A couple of weeks later, they called. I come in for the interview, and again, I got the position, and I was there for the next 13 years.
Wow.
Because I had a great principal who took wanted me to be the best teacher I can be. So he gave me a lot of professional development, a lot of coaching, and also had a great mentor in a 30-year veteran who had been there before. And so I learned the ropes again, learning elementary mathematics. And I also taught science. That was the first time I taught science and math. And then I fell in love with science as well. But what I remember from that experience is you really have to have good mentors and good coaches, and someone you can just bounce ideas off. Ask, do you think is this going to work? Part of being reflective, but you can be reflective. But when you have a veteran presence that you can work with, then that's even more beneficial for you and ultimately for your students. So so from there, I taught math and science to fifth graders for about 3 years. And it's not the biggest deal, but one of my one of the things I'm proud of is that
claim to fame.
With my last year in fifth grade with MCAS, my co-teacher and I were very proud of our students who came in number one in math at 2005, I believe, and number two in science. So very proud of that. But I think a lot of I'll talk a little bit about it later. But it wasn't, we weren't teaching them what they needed to know that for the test. We actually taught them how to think, and I believe to doing well in these tests or just doing well in general. So after 3 years of math and science fifth graders, I was asked to teach sixth grade just science, and I did that for the next 10 years in Blanchard School in Boxborough. I just loved it. It was the beginning of the science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM, and eventually worked with an art teacher to create our STEAM program at the school. And every day was just, never a dull moment, right? Never the same day twice. And we expanded our project-based learning curriculum during that time span. And really gave students an opportunity to collaborate, to come up with ideas, to test them
Mm-hmm.
out, uh, to to tweak ideas, or tweak the projects as needed. So in other words, they learn to think, and they learn to work with each other, which is what we need now in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
Except now that you could be working with a group in India or China or Brazil,
Right.
or, France, or wherever, through Zoom, like we're doing now. It's technology has really ramped up our ability to learn and to work together. So, you want me to slow down
No,
for a second? Or do
yeah.
you,
I mean, I enjoy like listening to your journey, Jason. I feel like the last few minutes, I'm like, wow, I can learn from you in terms of what you have done prior to education. And I got excited when you said your students and your co-teachers really ranked number one for the MCAS in 2005. And I'm like, ooh, taking down notes. Maybe later on, I'm going to have to call Jason to really teach us how to really teach not just our students, but starting with our teachers so that our teachers can definitely learn how to teach students how to think. Because I think that's the missing
yes,
piece to it.
yes. Yes, for
Yeah.
sure. And again, I
Mhm.
don't put much stock in these standardized tests because it's a it's a test of a 2-hour period in the spring,
Right.
right? And
Right.
but I think that the real uh, the real success comes in whether it's in the spring or in the summer,
Hmm.
or even a given class period, that the students are able to take aggregate amounts of
Hmm.
information, or large amounts of information, aggregate them, synthesize solutions to problems. I think that's the key to student success.
Right.
I always taught my students to be innovators,
Mm-hmm. Let's
to
see.
anticipate. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's because you're always, being an innovator means you're taking what you have now and making it better. And so in that regard, you're always thinking about what could be done better, what processes could be um, more efficient,
Mm-hmm.
and always to anticipate problems before they even exist.
That's right.
In the workforce, there are jobs now that we wouldn't even have fathomed back in 2005 or 2006, and that's true for the future as technology gets even more uh, um, complex and usable. We don't know what the jobs are going to
Mm-hmm.
be in the future. So if you're nimble enough, and you you have enough intellect and
Mm-hmm.
um, um, flexibility, adaptive mind, so to speak,
Right.
that growth mindset we keep talking about in
Right.
education, that you will be prepared for what's coming um, next.
That's right. So now, fast forward, you are now the principal of this wonderful school in Weston Public Schools, and you've been in this job for what, about 3 months?
This is, yeah. I
Yes.
started. Oh, actually, I started July 1st in
Okay.
Weston. Yeah, and prior to that, I was 3 years as an assistant principal in the Hopkinton School District,
Mm-hmm.
of about 640 second and third graders in one
Mm-hmm.
school.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then prior to that, I was in Southbridge, Massachusetts, for 2 years in a pre-K K1 school.
Okay.
So when I left Blanchard as a sixth grade science teacher, honestly, I felt that at there's some points in a career where you feel it's time to move on. You've
Mm-hmm.
done the best you can at one place,
Mm-hmm.
but I wanted to use my experience and skills at that point to help students in the Worcester area,
Mm-hmm.
where I live nearby. But my wife actually works for an organization called the African Community Education Program, and I did some volunteer work with some students who had who were refugees from Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was at Blanchard in Boxborough, and I thought to myself, I can bring some of what I've been doing in Acton Boxborough to the Worcester area. So I worked for a couple of years in a grade 7 math
Mm-hmm.
program in a charter school, and with the most diverse group of students I've ever worked with.
Mm-hmm.
And given that experience, a friend of mine who I went to principal school with happened to be a principal in Southbridge, and was looking for an assistant principal. I think
Mm-hmm.
it was budgeted for the first time for that school, and so I gave her a call. I said, "Hey, you're looking for an assistant principal. I'm interested." Also, because I've never worked with preschool, kindergarten, and first grades. I've mostly worked with seventh grade and fifth and sixth graders. So 5, 6, 7. I thought of it as a challenge to work with such young kids, and also challenge myself to learn more about literacy, because
Mm-hmm.
in the early grades, that's first and foremost is learning how to read.
That's right.
So I went there, as some of you know, Southbridge is a turnaround school. It's the state manages it, and I learned a lot there. There was a lot of professional, not only for leaders, but also for teachers in literacy and math, and enjoyed that opportunity, because working with little kids is a whole different ball game. It's
That's true.
not only are you working with them and learning to read, but social emotional skills, and learning just how to adjust to a you know a, to public school, basically,
Mm-hmm.
and,
Mm-hmm.
and working in a classroom. So really enjoyed my time there. Picked up a lot of skills that I brought over to Hopkinton, and then I combined all that. I was asked to apply for this position in Weston. I was really happy in Hopkinton, but uh, when I was asked to apply to Weston to become the principal, um, it was another challenge that I know that if I had passed it up, I would may have regretted it later. So
For
uh, I
sure.
went I went through the hiring process, having talking to the community, talking to my staff, now staff, and talking to the superintendent and the school committee members, and it was a grueling process, but it was
Mm-hmm.
also fun for me, because
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed again going back to the times when I knew I loved working with people. And this is just like, I treated it like working with people and meeting people, and letting them know what my vision was.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, I was hired for the position, and started. My last day at Hopkinton was actually the same day was my first day in Weston. So I left Hopkinton
Oh,
midday and went to Weston at a administrative retreat that same day. So there wasn't much of you know time in between, but
mm-hmm.
been there ever since, and busy every day.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah. So, Jason, I feel like you are committed to a lot of things, especially when it comes to building inclusive and welcoming schools. So, as a principal, how do you lead schools that are inclusive and foster the sense of belonging?
I think you model it. Every
Mm-hmm.
every day, I'm in the lobby greeting students, and
Mm-hmm.
as well as teachers, and I think you have to walk the hallways and say hello to anybody that's coming your way, whether they're kids or adults, whether it's the office uh, assistant, or uh, classroom teacher, or the custodian, or the librarian, or a preschooler, or a third grader. I believe you just have to be out there and be
Mm-hmm.
present. So if I were to give advice to budding leaders or principals or assistant principals or current leaders, it would be, to be brave, number one, because you can't be faint of heart in this job, because you never know it's going to come any day, right?
Yeah.
And be bold. I think you have to stand up for what you believe in, and to show your vision and describe your vision to your staff and to your students. Hold people accountable, and as I said, be present. Just be out there in the hallways, in the classrooms, in the cafeteria, in the playground, and not so much in your office. That's left for after the kids leave. It's another full day after the kids leave at 2:20. So.
Yeah. Jason, oh my gosh, I could just listen to all your stories, but I'd like to take a break. And when we get back, I'd love to hear from you about an inspiring. I know you have a lot of inspiring stories that you can share, but if you can share the most inspiring story that you've had as a school leader, that has continued your journey on this path, I'd love to hear that. All right.
Sounds good.
Okay. So, folks, we'll be back in a few minutes. See you in a bit.
Okay.
Channel is an online alternative new media platform of online shows for people on the go. Please watch all our shows as seen on screen. Imagine having your own show, your own playlist, your own content, but we make it easier for you. TNC aims to transform the lives of our viewers through engaging, authentic, and original content. Our channel is a responsible, global 24 over 7 platform that showcases Filipino talent, global influencers, cultural intelligence, and ingenuity. Please continue to support Once a Teacher, Always a Teacher on selected Saturdays at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can watch live or on replay via Facebook or YouTube. Follow us on IG. Listen to us on Spotify and Apple Podcast. Just search hashtag TNC Now. For sponsorships, please email now at thenewchannel.com or send us a DM. Enjoy these life-changing shows because we made them for you. All right, folks, let's bring back our guest, Principal Jason Dimen.
Thank you, Alpha.
Jason? Yeah, thank you too. Thank you. All right. So we left off with the question in terms of your inspiring story.
Yeah, I would have to say a recent story involves a teacher who I worked with a couple years ago, who is a special education teacher for moderate and severe special education students. And this teacher, her name's Ashley, ran one of our programs in the school, a sub-separate program with about 5 to 6 students with autism spectrum disability. So there were about 5 or 6 kids, and with about 5, ABA adults helping in the program. And with support, she was able. This is a second and mostly second graders and a couple third graders. She was able to have them access the academics, taught them how to read. Was able to, by the end of the first year, able to get them mostly out in the classrooms, joining their peers, the students, that is. And in the second year, the community she creates, it's like a family, because students, have sometimes their daily struggles, as well as the staff. It's a very difficult, profession to be in. Sometimes, a student might get aggressive, physically aggressive, or verbally aggressive, and so on. But every day, this person named Ashley led that team and led them to work as collaborative as possible. Again, like a family. And she did, I think, what I would have done when I was also teaching in a more of a PBL type environment. She opened up a cafe. It was student driven. She asked students, what would they want to do if they were to open a business. And one of the students, said, let's sell coffee to the teachers. And it was a few weeks into the making, probably a couple months, where they came together again, shared ideas. How are we going to advertise? How much money are we going to sell this for? And what are we going to do with the proceeds? A couple months later, they had a coffee cart, and every Friday morning they would come down to the office and to different classrooms of teachers who ordered ahead of time, sold coffee for $1. I think actually bought the coffee from Starbucks and resold it at a loss. But the point was that these kids were able to work together, achieve a common goal, and literally brought smiles to everybody on a Friday morning. and the proceeds went to a local charity that works with kids and provide
Mm,
students with need, with things that they could use. So the overall experience was just very inspiring,
mhm,
for students who some people think
mhm,
you know may not be able to do as much as other kids or whatnot. I mean,
mhm,
actually debunks that idea, because
mhm,
everybody can achieve at the same level with a little bit of support, and truly with a little bit of love. So
mhm.
that's I think about that every now and then when things get tough, and think about what we can achieve working together.
Oh my gosh, Jason, that just melted my heart. That's pretty amazing. I can just put myself in the shoes of the teacher, and then the impact of what the teacher did with the students to the entire community, and the
Hmm.
fact that the proceeds actually went to
Hmm.
another organization. Oh my
Yes. Yep.
gosh. Oh,
Yeah.
that's just beautiful.
And one of the another vivid recollection is when other students uh, would pass down the hallway and see
Mhm.
their peers who were in that classroom, uh, doing something for the school community. I think it inspired the other kids to, hey, why can't we do that? Or let's talk about this
Right.
or that. So inspiring all the way around.
Yeah. Well, tell Ashley, she just inspired me to actually look at some of the things that we are doing in our elementary schools, especially for our students in the sub programs.
Hmm.
So she just gave me an idea. Maybe it's time
Great.
for us to actually open our own cafes in the elementary schools, not just in the high school and also at the middle school. So,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
that's
Great.
great. Yeah, wonderful. All right, Jason, what makes you happy as a school principal?
The smiling faces of those kids when they come off the bus and or get dropped off by their parents. As much as we tell them walking feet don't run,
That's
I do, uh, smile a little bit when they run towards the school with those happy faces and their big backpacks behind them, and uh, starting a school day anew, with their friends and with their teachers, and you just feel the vibe of the whole school. It's a happy vibe, and uh, students are come to school ready to learn, and at the end of the day, so we have a fairly our hours are the school day starts at 8 o'clock, and the dismissal starts at 2:15. So occasionally, I'd be doing some work, then all of a sudden I look up, it's already 2 o'clock, and that's how
Mhm,
quickly the day goes, because there's lots of things that happen during the day for me. But I think part of the reason why it goes by so quickly is because I'm in the classrooms a lot, and kneeling down with the kids and asking them what they're learning, and participating with some of their activities, and uh, and just conversing with them as much as I can. And the how articulate kids these days are amazing, and
mhm,
the way they interact with each other during the the learning time and during the projects that they work at, and really that's what it's about. We want uh, students at a young age to eventually be adults who can communicate with each other in a kind way, and collaborate, and come up with ideas together, and implement them, and again, and work with each other when things need to become better. So there's a lots of in our world today. There's a number of complex issues, and I think
mhm,
with discourse and dialogue, and
mhm.
a common goal, we can solve some of these problems that ails us today.
That's true. And Jason, as a principal and also as a person of color, um, how do you envision, or what would you actually advise to uh, people of color who may be entering the education field and who may be aspiring to become education leaders? How,
Sure.
what would you tell them in order to amplify their voices and their presence in the education field, particularly
Uh,
in Massachusetts?
again, I mentioned be bold, and I think
Yeah.
that's the,
Hmm.
I go back to that: be brave, be
Hmm.
bold, and be confident with your experience and your skills, and know that there's people behind you.
Hmm.
You mentioned it earlier. I do believe I'm the only Filipino. I haven't met any other
Yeah.
principals of Filipino origin. I do know
Hmm.
my colleague Chris, who is at Acton Boxborough, who's also assistant principal and soon to be
Hmm.
principal. Um, but I, someone did say to me, 2,600 administrators, I believe, in Massachusetts, and only about 200 are Asian.
That's right.
Number one,
Yep.
and that's a very very small percentage, less than 1%, I believe, and but we need to be out there. We need to stand together. I know that our teacher group in Massachusetts is helping with that, the Filipino
Hmm.
teacher group, and there's many groups out there as well that can work together, be visible, and again, if there's opportunities out there, apply for them. You never
Hmm.
know what's going to happen. It's the old adage where you can only get some goals when you shoot for them, right? So,
Right. Yeah.
or in some people, Filipinos play the lottery. You can't win it unless you buy one, right? Buy a ticket. So you have to make that effort to apply for these positions, get those interviews, and show them that you know no matter your background or it's your experience and your skills that are going to get you that job, as well as your ability to articulate your vision.
Hmm. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for those reminders. Now, I feel like you wear a lot of hats. You're a
Mhm.
dad, you're a husband, and on top of that, as a school principal, eh, you probably put in a lot of time. So how do you balance it all, Jason?
Yes, it does take a lot of time. I live a little bit. I have a little bit of commute for my current job, so typical day starts at 5:15 and
Uh-huh.
being on the road by 6:15, and it takes about an hour for me to get there by hopefully by 7:15, 7:30. And again, the school day starts at 8. We dismiss at 2:15, and I find myself there around 6 o'clock on average. um, if there's meetings, it's an additional uh, hour or two towards the end of the night. I've been getting home probably around 7 o'clock, 7:30,
Mm-hmm.
usually. But you have to make time to take care of yourself too. I've joined a health club on the way home from work and try to get there as much as I can. Luckily, I don't have young kids now. Both my two uh, children are grown.
Mm-hmm.
One is already on her own in the biotech industry, and I
Nice.
have a sophomore in college at the University of Miami. So I'm an empty nester right now, which helps a lot. I owe a lot of credit to my wife, who she doesn't have to, but she gets up with me at 5 something in the morning
Oh.
to just have a couple minutes to be together during in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, I have to find a better balance because I don't want to be getting home too late and then being too tired. Have dinner and then uh, sometimes have to go to bed right away. So
That's right.
that's a challenge. It's always going to be a challenge to find that work-life balance. If especially if you have younger children or
Mm-hmm.
children in high school or middle school. So that's that is a consideration when you're considering these types of positions. But as the year goes on, and things hopefully slow down a little bit, um, that the work life balance will be better. Although I don't know if it'll slow down. We're already in November next week, so it's
Exactly.
just fine. It's just crazy.
Yeah, I hear you. I feel you. I feel like, the last few weeks since September, 10 hours every single day is the norm, at
Hmm.
least for me.
Yeah, most people, that's not in education think, the teachers get the summers off and
Mm-hmm.
they're done by 3 or whatnot. And as you know, Alpha, that's definitely not the case. There's many, many hours of prep time and
Mm-hmm.
meeting time, and that goes into teaching and administering. But your family is the most important, and
Sure.
sometimes that needs to take precedence. And but in our school, and I hope in every school, that there's that consideration for people's personal lives as well.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Jason, any last words that you can share with our viewers?
Yeah, I'll tell you one other quick story if you have a
Yes,
minute.
yeah, of
So
course.
I know this guy who lived in the Philippines. Grew up in Tondo. If some of you know Tondo,
Yes.
it's one of the poorest sections of Manila.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, eventually, uh, eventually got to college because his mom made suman
Mm-hmm.
and sold suman, and that helped with to get this guy into college and eventually to medical school where he met another potential doctor at the time who was from the other side of the uh, streets, if you will, from
Mm-hmm.
a wealthy family, and together they uh, eventually got married, had 5 kids, one of them being me. So
Oh,
that guy is his name's Reynaldo. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. He passed away in 2010, but he's my dad and uh, one of my inspirations. He always said, as you may have heard before, leave something or leaves a place better than when you found it. And so I hope I've given some nuggets today from my experience where some people can maybe think about and benefit from down the road.
oh, what a beautiful story. Wow, that just almost like put a little tear in my eye just listening to that. I don't know why, but to your dad who's no longer here, he pretty much said it right. Yeah, we're gonna aspire to leave a place where we are in better. So,
For
yeah.
sure.
Wow. Well, thanks, Jason. And for anybody who would want to get in touch with you, where can they get in touch with you?
Sure, they can reach me at my work email. It's dimenj at weston.org, dimenj at weston.org. And or just Google Woodland School in Weston, call the main office, and they can always reach me there. And I'd be happy to talk with anyone who is willing to listen. So I'd appreciate that. And thank you for the time we spent together here tonight, Alpha.
Mhm.
Uh, it made me recall some of the journey I've been through, but also if I can help anyone, uh, achieve the same goals, if that's what they're passionate about, I'd be more than happy to.
Wonderful. Yeah. I think you left us today with a lot of inspiring stories. I'm pretty much inspired with a few of the things that you've shared just for this hour. And I'm sure our viewers have learned so much from you. And who would not be inspired to be with you as, from my point of view, the first Filipino school principal here in Massachusetts? So, what a great achievement. Continue to fly the Filipino flag and I wish you lots of strength, continued wisdom, and inspiration to all the people that you encounter on a daily basis.
Thank you, Alpha. Mabuhay.
Mabuhay. And to all folks who are watching, thank you so much for being with us again this episode. I will see you next time. Bye for now.